Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. So let's just jump right in. We usually think of money management as this super rigid, math-heavy thing, right? Like it's all about spreadsheets, formulas, and crunching numbers perfectly. But today, we're going to look at a totally absurd, but literally 100% true story that proves why your behavior, not your raw brain power, is the real secret to building and keeping wealth. Okay, picture this, a genius tech executive. We're talking about a guy who designed and patented crucial Wi-Fi components in his 20s and successfully sold multiple companies, an absolute tech wizard. But his relationship with money, well, it was kind of like a toddler's. Get this. One day, he casually hands a buddy thousands of dollars in cash and just says, "Go get me a few $1,000 gold coins." An hour later, he and his friends take these heavy, incredibly valuable gold coins to a dock out on the Pacific Ocean, and they literally start skipping them into the sea, just for fun, like rocks. It's insane, right? And shocker, this same genius eventually went completely broke. Now, I want you to starkly contrast that guy with a man named Ronald Reed. $8 million. Ronald wasn't some Wall Street hotshot. He definitely wasn't a tech founder. He was actually a humble gas station attendant who fixed cars for 25 years. After that, he was a janitor who quietly swept floors at JCPenney for almost 2 decades. He lived in a tiny, modest house, and his absolute favorite thing to do was just chop firewood. But here's the kicker. When Ronald passed away in 2014, he left behind a staggering net worth of over $8 million, giving millions away to his local hospital and library. So how on earth does a rural janitor build massive generational wealth, while a highly educated, insanely successful finance executive loses literally everything? Well, on one hand, Ronald Reed was deeply patient and, incredibly frugal. On the exact opposite end of the spectrum, we have Richard Fuscone. Richard was a Harvard-educated Merrill Lynch executive, so successful he retired in his 40s. But Richard borrowed heavily to expand a lavish 18,000-square-foot mansion. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, his massive debt completely wiped him out. He went bankrupt. Ronald was patient, Richard was greedy. It's really that simple. That behavioral gap totally eclipsed the massive education and income gap between the two men. And that brings us to our first major takeaway. Section 1, Behavior Beats Intelligence, the soft skill of money. Look, the truth is, no one is actually crazy with money. We just all have entirely different experiences and weird lenses through which we view the world. Financial success isn't a hard science like physics, where, a formula guarantees the exact same result every single time. It's totally a soft skill. Doing well with money actually has very little to do with your raw intelligence or where you went to college or what you mathematically know. It has absolutely everything to do with how you behave. And the tricky part? Behavior is remarkably hard to teach, even to incredibly brilliant people. This brilliantly illustrates our core thesis today. Napoleon actually put it best when he said, "A genius is the man who can do the average thing when everyone else around him is losing his mind." Being a true financial genius isn't about building some crazy complex algorithm or perfectly timing the market. It's honestly just about keeping your cool. It's about maintaining a steady course and resisting the urge to panic when the rest of the world is basically losing its mind. Let's roll right into our next core lesson. Section 2, Getting Wealthy versus Staying Wealthy, the Art of Survival. It's a fascinating realization, really. Getting wealthy and staying wealthy, they actually require two completely opposite mindsets. To get money, you have to take risks, be relentlessly optimistic, and really put yourself out there. But to keep money, you need the exact opposite. Good investing isn't necessarily about making these brilliant, once-in-a-lifetime leaps of logic. It's much more about consistently not screwing up. It's about avoiding catastrophic mistakes over a very long period of time. To see exactly what happens when you lack that second mindset, let's look at the legendary trader Jesse Livermore. Back in 1929, during literally one of the worst stock market crashes in human history, he accurately bet against the market. He made the equivalent of $3 billion in a single day. $3 billion! He was instantly one of the richest men on the planet. But fast forward to 1933, he lost absolutely everything and filed for bankruptcy. Basically, overflowing with confidence from his massive win, he started making larger, riskier bets and wound up impossibly deep in debt. He definitely had the skills to get rich, but he completely lacked the healthy paranoia needed to actually keep it. So the harsh lesson here is that keeping money requires frugality, a healthy dose of paranoia, and above all, a focus on survival.
You can and absolutely should be an optimist about the long-term future. You gotta believe things will grow, right? But at the exact same time, you must be deeply paranoid about the present. Survival is probably the single most important word in finance, because if you don't survive the short-term dips and crashes, you won't stick around long enough for your investments to actually compound and do their magic.
Which naturally leads us to one of the most counterintuitive traps of modern spending. Section 3, wealth is what you don't see, the illusion of riches. Okay, listen to this. Spending money to show people how much money you have is literally the fastest way to have less money. It sounds so obvious when you say it out loud, but it's this incredibly powerful psychological trap that so many of us fall into. We tend to judge wealth entirely by what we can visibly see. The massive houses, the crazy international vacations, the flashy designer clothes. We use those visible cues to gauge success. But in reality, true wealth is hidden. This brings up a fascinating concept known as the man in the car paradox. When you see someone driving a $100,000 Ferrari down the street, you don't actually know if they're rich. All you truly know for sure is that they have $100,000 less than they did before they bought the car. Or even worse, you might just be looking at someone trapped under a massive, crushing bank loan. Wealth isn't the car. Wealth is the financial assets that haven't been converted into stuff. It's the unspent money. Wealth is the options you preserve, not the luxury items you buy.
So if the ultimate goal isn't to buy flashy things just to impress strangers at a stoplight, what's the actual point of saving all this money? Let's get into Section 4, the ultimate dividend, controlling your time.
I absolutely love this concept. Controlling your time is the highest dividend money pays, period. The highest form of wealth isn't a luxury item or a corner office or some fancy status symbol. It's the absolute freedom to wake up every single morning and say to yourself, I can do whatever I want today. That level of total autonomy, that is the true pinnacle of financial success. The ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want, it's priceless. That is the universal fuel of joy. Money's greatest intrinsic value isn't its purchasing power. It's simply giving you control over your own time. It's giving you the profound independence to navigate life entirely on your own terms. It gives you the breathing room to make choices based on what makes you genuinely happy, rather than what you're just forced to do to pay the bills. And speaking of navigating life, we have to remember something crucial. The global economy and your own personal finances are driven far more by appealing fictions and the stories we tell ourselves rather than by spreadsheets, formulas, or statistics. We are completely guided by human behavior, by mass optimism, by sudden bursts of panic and fear, and by the narratives we construct in our own heads, not just hard mathematical logic. As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to take a second to reflect deeply on your own financial behavior. Ask yourself, are your money decisions currently being driven by a rigid math formula, or are they being driven by the psychological story you're constantly telling yourself? Remember, no one is crazy, but we all need to understand our own behavior if we want to survive the game. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I really hope this explainer has empowered you to view your wealth in a totally new light. Catch you next time.